Whether or not you're a car enthusiast, visiting the National Automobile Museum in Reno, Nevada should definitely be on every Reno visitor's list. Its recognition as one of America's top 10 car museums is certainly well-deserved. Fascinating interactive and themed displays highlight how cars have influenced American society for well over a century. And inside, you'll see a wide range of unique models. From the very first horseless carriages to the creme de la creme that only the richest in society could even begin to afford, to the one-of-a-kind. This museum will appeal to not only the avid collector, which you'll see plenty of as you walk around, but also novices, like me. And it's very kid-friendly. So buckle up as we dive into the history and the incredible collection that's housed right in the heart of downtown Reno. Hi, I'm Tiffany from Destination for Vacation. Thanks for joining me. The National Automobile Museum was founded by the late Bill Harrah, a casino magnate and passionate car collector. Born in South Pasadena, California in 1911, William Harrah studied mechanical engineering at UCLA. His father had been an attorney, a former mayor of Venice, California, and a successful businessman in finance and real estate. But, like many people, after the stock market crash of 1929, he lost most of his wealth. The one business he had left of any value was a lease on the Plaza building at the entrance to Venice Beach Pier. It had a hot dog stand, shooting gallery, restaurant, pool hall, and a milk bottle game. At the time, bingo and any form of gambling was illegal in California. However, there was a loophole in the law that operators could take advantage of. Games that were based on skill were perfectly legal. Harrah's father used a small room in the building to operate a circle game, a popular variation of bingo in which players sat in a large circular-style bar during the game and marked their bingo cards. A revolving game board with a connecting runway was set in the center. It was a group game in which each player determined the next number called by rolling a ball down the runway so that it landed into one of the numbered slots. This rolling of the ball turned it into a skills-based game. Bill was looking for a summer job and offered to help his father with the circle game, but then he noticed another game that he thought would be more lucrative and wouldn't require shills, people that were being paid to play for the house. This game was called the Reno game. Similar in setup to the circle game, each player received 5 cards. Players would then roll a marble down a ramp. If they hit their own number, they drew a playing card and tried to get a pair, which would then help them have a higher hand than the other people in the group. The player with the highest hand at the end of the game won, just like in poker. Bill quickly realized that when the public perceives a game as being played fairly, without shills, it's better, in the long run, for business. Bill ended up dropping out of UCLA to continue with this venture. After some disagreement with his father over how to operate the game, Bill, just 20 years old, bought his father's Reno game business for $500. And by the time he was 23 years old, his business was making more than $25,000 a year. Not bad for the mid-1930s. But it was a constant struggle to keep his operations open. Anti-gambling authorities continuously tried to shut down his business. For the 4 years he ran the game in Venice, there was a continuing pattern of getting closed down by authorities, changing the game slightly and then reopening it, and then running it again until the next time it was shut down by the state. After visiting Reno in 1937 and being impressed with the ease and legality of its gaming operations, Bill decided to move there. When he was presented with the opportunity to buy a bingo parlor at 124 North Center Street, he seized it, opening Harrah's Club Bingo in the fall of 1937, at a time when the allure of casinos and gambling was really gaining momentum. Unfortunately, that effort didn't take, and the club lasted only a few weeks. But Bill was a quick learner. Over the next decade, he opened more bingo parlors in downtown Reno, buying out a number of competitors. He learned that location was key, as was having other diversions besides gambling. When he operated bingo parlors on both sides of Harold's Club, he convinced the owner of Harold's, Pappy Smith, to cut a door between his casino and both of Harrah's bingo parlors. This allowed drinks to be served in the bingo parlors, and players could roam freely between the businesses, which improved profits for all three locations. In 1946, when he was just 35 years old, Bill opened his first casino, Harrah's Club, which became known for its friendly atmosphere and high service standards. What made Bill Harrah stand out was his innovative approach to casino management. Bill discovered that when entertainment was offered, people experienced a feeling that they were somewhere special, and it gave them an excuse for visiting a casino. He focused on creating a complete guest experience, incorporating entertainment, dining, and luxurious accommodations. This was relatively uncommon at the time, as many casinos centered primarily around gambling. He also coined the term gaming to try to overcome the negative connotations that were often associated with gambling. Bill Harrah quickly recognized the potential for growth in the casino industry. Over the years, he expanded his empire by acquiring several other properties, while most Lake Tahoe casinos at the time closed for the winter after Labor Day. Harrah's Casino remained open all year long, bussing patrons from Northern California to keep his casinos busy. A well-liked figure among both entertainers and employees, he created the Nevada Gaming Control Board in 1955 and took his company public in 1971, creating Harrah's Incorporated. By 1973, it was listed on the New York Stock Exchange. Having acquired a respect for the law from his attorney father, Harrah strongly believed that if gambling operations were to remain legal in the long run, they had to be run without any question of integrity. Over the next 2 decades, operations continued to expand. At its height, the Harrah's Corporation was one of the largest gaming companies in the United States. Bill Harrah's influence reached beyond just the casino industry. He played a significant role in shaping tourism in Nevada, attracting visitors from all over the country. After his death in 1978, the company continued to thrive and expand, culminating in a major milestone in 2005 when Harrah's merged with Caesars Entertainment. But his true passion extended beyond casinos. Bill Harrah was an avid car collector, accumulating a massive collection over several decades. He remembered being fascinated with cars even at the age of 8 when his father borrowed a Marmon to drive the family to his grandfather's funeral. He once humorously stated that he remembered more about the Marmon, which was much classier than their own family car, than he did about the funeral. Harrah made it a goal to own every significant automobile in American history, and he was eager to share his collection with the public. In 1962, he rented the old Pacific Fruit Express Ice House in Sparks to show around 150 of his meticulously restored automobiles. Eventually, the collection ended up spanning multiple showrooms across 13 different warehouses. Bill had big plans for his collection of over 1,400 vehicles. He had purchased over 300 acres and hired a San Francisco architectural firm to create a world-class museum that included a hotel and casino, restaurants, golf course, ice arena, and Disney-created animatronics and state-of-the-art displays to appeal to car lovers worldwide. Harrah's Auto World was in the initial stages of planning when Bill Harrah died in 1978 at the age of 66. After his death, Holiday Inns purchased Harrah's hotels and casinos and Harrah's automobile collection in 1980 for a price in excess of $300 million. When the company announced plans to sell the collection, there was tremendous public outcry, so Holiday Inns donated 175 cars and Harrah's personal research library for a future nonprofit museum. At the time, it was the largest corporate philanthropic gift in the history of the United States. Holiday Inn sold the balance of the Harrah collection at record-setting auctions during a 2-year period between 1984 and 1986. In 1989, to fulfill his wishes of sharing his collection with the public, a museum was established to showcase the evolution of automobile history from the late 1800s to the present day. Through donations from the city of Reno, the state of Nevada, and many individuals and organizations, The National Automobile Museum opened on November 5, 1989. Today, it owns 225 vehicles, but also showcases cars from private collections, automotive clubs, and sponsors, allowing for a more diverse representation of automotive history. These temporary exhibitions can include a range of vehicles, classic cars, unique custom builds, or significant historical finds. The museum also holds a massive collection that actually totals over 2,000 items, which allows it to rotate exhibits and provide fresh experiences for returning visitors. The National Automotive Museum is nestled next to the Truckee River on the corner of Lake Street and Mill Street. GPS should take you right to the museum's ample and well-maintained parking lot, where you'll also find the museum's entrance. Parking is free. If you have a few extra minutes, be sure to walk around to the front of the building towards Lake Street. It's a bit of a rundown and somewhat sketchy area, but it's worth it because here's where you'll find something that many visitors to Reno don't even know about. The old Reno Arch. This is the original steel arch that was installed in 1926 on Virginia Street. It was eventually replaced by later versions of arches that many of us recognize from movies and TV shows. If you're interested in learning a little more about it, Destination for Vacation has a video for it. I've linked that video in the notes below. The museum really makes great efforts to appeal to a broad range of ages and interests. As we walked up to the entrance, we were greeted by this instantly recognizable icon. The museum is open daily until 5 p.m., so it's a nice stop when your wallet needs a little break from those one-armed bandits back at the casino. Once you step inside, you'll pay a nominal fee for your tickets, and then you're free to explore the museum on your own. Daily 90-minute guided tours, led by volunteers, are available at 1:30. Because the tours are led by volunteers, it's always a good idea to call ahead to make sure that a docent is available on the day you're planning to visit. But the museum is very well designed to be a self-guided experience. It offers galleries, a gift shop, a theater, and a kids' educational activity area. If you prefer to go in chronological order, as I do, you'll step inside the Blacksmith Building, which is the first gallery. Here you'll find the oldest cars in the collection, which are also among the oldest American cars still in existence. While the Roper steam carriage from 1865 is the oldest American car in existence and is currently on display at the Henry Ford Museum in Michigan, this may be the prototype of the Capital Chariot steamer. Frank Goodwin began working on it in 1889. It was a prototype, and he eventually sold the patent rights to it to the Capital Automobile Company of Washington, D.C. in 1902. That was the only year production was attempted. It's believed that this may be the actual first car that Goodwin built, since it was his personal car. If that were the case, then this would be one of the oldest American cars left in existence. It's powered by a 2-cylinder steam engine, and it generates a whopping 6 horsepower through a chain drive to the rear axle. Giving the term hot seat a new meaning, the fourth passenger rides facing backwards on the single front seat that's placed over the boiler. This Capital Chariot was purchased directly from the Goodwin family, and it's the only one known to exist. The car has never been restored from its original condition when purchased from Goodwin's garage in 1974. Or, take this 1892 Fillion. Achille Fillion bought this steam-powered quadricycle on the spot when he saw it displayed at the Elmira, New York County Fair in 1891. In 1892, he received a patent for certain new and useful improvements in steam carriages. One of these was to add a steering wheel to the front seat, while the engineer manned the rear seat to keep the boiler running. This one's steering wheel was lost over time, but you can still see the hole in the front floorboard where it was originally located. And here's where you'll also find the car that started it all for Bill Harrah, this Maxwell, which he purchased to help out a family when the brother of one of his friends died. At the time, he didn't know a lot about classic cars, so he decided to soup the car up while restoring it, giving it a coat of red paint, upholstering the seats in vinyl, and adding different and what he thought better parts. And when he saw an ad for a 1948 horseless carriage tour in Southern California, he quickly entered it. There, he told everyone it was a 1907 Maxwell, but it was actually made in 1911. Far from making it a purebred, his restoration had changed the car into a bit of a mutt. It had the wrong radiator and hood. 1911s were always painted blue and had ivory wheels. The rubber that he'd added to the running boards was all wrong. It was supposed to be linoleum. The seats, headlights, carburetor, radiator, hood, crank handle, fenders, and pretty much everything that was added to the car when he had it restored were all wrong. But even though he was mortified upon learning the truth at the event, this turned out to be a good thing. Harrah learned the value of researching and consulting with experts. He realized that if he'd had the original catalog, he would have been able to restore it the way that it should look. Instead, he had restored it the way that he got it when he bought it from the family. After this huge embarrassment, all of his future restorations of cars that he purchased from that point forward were painstakingly accurate. This may be one of the reasons why the museum has such an extensive research library. It holds the detailed original files and binders that Bill Harrah had produced for the restoration of each of the cars in his collection. Despite the issues with the restoration, Harrah ended up keeping this Maxwell exactly as he had originally restored it as a reminder of the mistakes he had made with the first car in his collection, so he'd never be tempted to make them again. As you continue walking along in this gallery, you'll see why the early automobiles were called horseless carriages. Detailed signs for each car let you know when and where it was manufactured, the type of engine, purchase price, a little history of the company, and other interesting information. This 1906 Adams Farwell is the only one known to exist. This car, the 1907 Thomas Flyer, was the winner of the 1908 New York to Paris automobile race. The race started in Times Square, New York on February 12, 1908, with 6 cars representing the 4 nations of Germany, France, Italy, and the United States. At the time, there were very few paved roads, and in some places, no roads at all, and the general public perceived the horse and carriage to be a much more reliable means of transportation than the automobile. But this race ended up changing that perception for good. The proposed route, a trek of over 22,000 miles, was designed to take the drivers westward across the United States to San Francisco, through areas with very few paved roads, and then head north. They would then take a cargo ship to Valdez, Alaska, where they would drive across the frozen Bering Strait. This is the reason why the race started in February instead of a warmer month. The race would then continue through Siberia, which had never been traveled through by car. Then Moscow, St. Petersburg, Berlin, and finally reach the end in Paris. At times, the teams resorted to straddling train rails with their cars riding from railroad tie to railroad tie on balloon tires because there were no usable roads. For the American leg of the race, this Thomas Flyer was the first to arrive to San Francisco in 41 days, 900 miles ahead of its closest competitor. Hard to believe, but this was the first time an automobile had completely crossed the United States during winter. After the American team investigated the proposed trail in Valdez, Alaska, the drivers concluded that the only way to cross Alaska in a car would be to dismantle it and then transport it by dog sled. So the race committee wisely abandoned the idea of crossing Alaska and the Bering Strait. The Americans were ordered to return to Seattle and then sail over to Asia. By that point, only 3 cars were still in contention in the race. The remaining part of the race was very tough due to the lack of decent roads, and progress each day was often measured in feet instead of miles. There are so many fascinating details to the race that are just too much to get into in this video, and probably better left to someone much more well-versed in the subject. But they're well covered in a 2012 article in the Smithsonian Magazine, which I've linked below. Ultimately, the Americans' Thomas Flyer, a 60 horsepower touring car that was driven open-topped with no heater or windshield, ended up winning the race with, even to this day, the largest winning margin in any motorsport. This was a key event in history because the race finally established the reliability of the automobile as a dependable means of transportation, which helped shift the public's perception of the automobile as simply an amusement of the rich to a reliable and viable means of long-distance transportation for the general public. The race also led to calls for improved roads to be constructed in many parts of the world. Car manufacturing was on a roll. May I pause now with a request? If you've enjoyed watching this video so far, and I hope you have, then I'd be very grateful if you'd consider subscribing to Destination for Vacations channel. As a somewhat newer channel, it really helps to increase visibility for each new video that's posted. You can simply click on the subscribe button that's on the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. Thanks for your consideration. This gallery also houses a car with an interesting emblem, the 1913 Crit motor car. The Crit Motor Car Company manufactured cars for a very short 5-year period between 1910 and 1915 in Detroit, Michigan. Originally, the cars were manufactured without emblems, but starting in 1912, a blue and white emblem containing a swastika was used. Swastikas had been used for thousands of years in many societies prior to the Nazis adopting it, which essentially tainted the symbol. The museum's signage points out that the Crit symbol was in the same style as the Creek American Indian style, and it symbolized good luck. But for some, it's still, at first glance, a little startling to see. Something that really stands out at the museum is just how unique cars were back in the day. Movie fans might recognize this 1912 Rambler in the 1997 movie Titanic. And while the museum does have one of the first Tesla models from 2008, it reminds us that electric cars have been around for more than 100 years. Like this beauty, a 1912 Baker Electric. Or this 1914 Detroit Electric. Customers could purchase this car with an optional battery upgrade, which used these Edison batteries made of nickel and iron instead of the standard lead and acid cells. The Edison batteries were lighter and stronger, but had an additional cost of $880. The battery upgrade itself cost almost as much as 2 Model T Fords. This particular car was owned by John D. Rockefeller Jr., the son of the richest man in the world at the time. So, of course, price was no issue. But it was a little ironic that the son of the founder of Standard Oil Company would forsake gasoline and own not just one, but 2 of these electric gentleman's roadsters, with an average range of 50 miles and a top speed of 25 miles per hour. Doctors, who at the time primarily made house calls, loved the traction this car had in snowy weather due to the extra battery weight and smooth acceleration of the electric motor. While the base price for a 1914 Model T Ford was $550, this 1914 Detroit Electric had a list price of $2,550 plus the additional $880 if you wanted the Edison batteries. The story continues in the second gallery, starting with this 1917 Cole. And this 1925 McFarlane, the Americans' version of the Rolls-Royce. From Pontiacs to Chryslers to Lincolns, and even a Tucker. You'll find plenty of American cars well represented. Are you more of a fan of German automaking? Then perhaps This Mercedes-Benz, once owned by a European princess. Personally, I gravitate towards the Franklins. Like the Franklins, this Julian was also manufactured in Syracuse, New York. Of course, no car museum is complete without a Ford Model T and a Ford Model A. This one was used by the U.S. Postal Service. But this museum also has the original version of an RV, a 1921 Model T camp car. The camp car was the first do-it-yourself project that arrived on your doorstep in sections. Believe it or not, the Anheuser-Busch Beer Company was the actual manufacturer of the camp car. Over 2,000 different add-on accessories were available to Model T owners. The museum believes that this is the only one in existence with an original camping set containing cooking and eating utensils packed in a small trunk. The camp car could seat 6 adults, and it provided sleeping room for 4 in 2 Pullman-style bunks. It had a folding table, 2-burner stove, 8-gallon water supply, plus easy stowage of blankets, clothing, and food in several lockers. This one-of-a-kind, copper-bodied 1921 Rolls-Royce Silver Ghost is a true beauty. Of course, kids tend to be less impressed by the Rolls-Royce and far more interested in the Pizza Planet truck, which they've seen in the Toy Story movies. The museum does offer a third gallery, which contains cars from the 1940s and beyond, but it was temporarily closed for an event during our visit. But there were 2 special exhibits that were open. The first was a Hollywood exhibit. Here, you'll find one of Elvis's famous Cadillacs, a convertible owned by John Wayne, and this beautiful 1961 Kia, owned by old Blue Eyes himself, Frank Sinatra. The collection also includes the 1949 Mercury that actor James Dean drove in the movie Rebel Without a Cause, which premiered in October 1955, 1 month after James Dean's death. Famous cars from the movies and TV shows are also represented. Jurassic Park, Magnum PI, a tribute to Austin Powers' Shagmobile, and even Speed Racer. DeLorean fan? Well, here you'll find not just 1, but 2. This 24-karat gold-plated DeLorean is one of only 2 built. It appeared in the 1979 American Express Christmas catalog as a promotion for the company's gold card holders. Its price at the time? Just $85,000, which is the equivalent of roughly $320,000 today. Feeling a need for speed? Then head on over to the second special exhibit, hosting some race cars driven by Paul Newman, as well as the world's first jet propulsion land speed car, the 1960 Flying Caduceus. Its Firestone tires held 200 pounds of pressure. While its builder set a goal of 500 miles per hour, the car only reached a top speed of 359.7 miles per hour at the Bonneville Salt Flats in 1963. What a ride that must have been. It's fascinating to think that an empire built on gaming has given us this magnificent collection at the National Automobile Museum. It's clear that the legacy of Bill Harrah extends far beyond the impressive collection housed within these walls. Every car here tells a story, from classic designs to engineering marvels, and each vehicle reflects the innovation and spirit of its time. Whether you're an avid car enthusiast or just curious about history, like me, there's something here for everyone. So the next time you find yourself in Reno, don't miss the opportunity to witness the automobiles that continue to inspire and captivate generations here at the National Automobile Museum. Thanks for joining me today. And if you're a subscriber, thank you. That really means a lot to me. I hope you can join me again soon. Until then, here's hoping that your next adventure is just around the corner.